We are all a part of God's story. We are part of his story or his story. We're all part of that. You know, in the Bible, we learn about different women: Miriam, Sarah, Rahab, Ruth, Esther, Mary, Martha, Lydia. Now we could add Gina, Sarah, Brooke. Our names as well, because we're part of that story. We're the continuing story. And that makes us excited. A friend of mine said she was reading a really good Christian book, and it was talking about our relationship with Christ. And she goes, I'm not just a nurse. I'm not just a mom. I'm not just a wife. I'm God's daughter. And it's like, wow, that's my highest calling, is to be his handmaiden, So that gives us excitement to be a part of what Paul was even doing. We're carrying that on. Verse 2 says, but we have renounced the hidden things of shame, not walking in craftiness, nor handling the word of God deceitfully, but by manifestation of the truth, commending ourselves to every man's conscience in the sight of God. I remember when I used to go to revival, and I was a greeter, and so, people would talk to me as they came in and went out. And this young lady, I don't think she had come that long, and she said to me, I just love the preaching. I don't really believe everything that's in the Bible. I'm like, what? What did you say? And I thought, sometimes that is kind of the way it is. We take the things we like, but subtle tampering with the Word of God, or undermining its authority, changing its message, ignoring its declarations, or just refusing to act upon what we know, that can never result in God being able to work through us. It can't even result in him growing just us, much less us reaching someone else. So the main thing that Paul was saying is that he was preaching just Christ, just the pure gospel. He wasn't there to lift himself up or anything, and he was trying to show that also by the way he lived, and he did, and we're going to talk a lot more about that, because that was the main thing that hit me, is the things Paul went through. Some of the people in Corinth were saying that Paul was speaking in mysteries, that he wasn't speaking clearly so that everyone could understand. So he wrote, in verse 3, but even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine on them. He's saying, yeah, it might be veiled to some people, but it's only those who choose not to believe. And we see that same thing, don't we, in unsaved friends and family? I can talk to them about cooking and recipes and shopping and kids and my hair and whatever I want to talk about, and everything's hunky-dory, But as soon as we start talking about God, wow, the whole feeling changes. They get angry or defensive, or they just try to get away from you, And that's because they are blinded by Satan. The word even tells us that. Paul wrote to Timothy and said that we might take them from the captivity of the enemy who is holding them captive against their will. And Jesus said, whatsoever things you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatsoever things you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And so that helped me to understand that when we pray, and when I pray for my unsaved family or loved ones, my friends, that I can pray and ask God to bind Satan's influence in their life so that they will be free then to see the truth. Because who wouldn't want it? If you could just objectively look, okay, God's provided this and this and this for you, and all you have to do is receive. Who wouldn't want that? Everybody would. But the enemy tries to blind them. And so that's a way that we can pray for them so that they won't be bound by that. And then they can open their hearts to God and receive him. Paul goes on and says, we do not preach ourselves. I love that. We do not preach ourselves. And how easy is that to do? Can you tell when you watch someone who's speaking or preaching? Like they think they're really great, You just, and not that you maybe even consciously think that, but you're like, kind of like getting the impression like, wow, they're really good. But you're not saying, God is so good. You're saying, they're really good, and that's not what Paul wanted at all. So he said, we do not preach ourselves, but Christ Jesus the Lord, and ourselves bondservants for Jesus' sake. For it is God who, and I love this line, for it is the God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. I mean, that is a mouthful, but it's like, wow. Wow, what a way to describe God. And Paul said that the proof of his integrity was that he was preaching Christ and that he was a bondservant and that he lived his life in a way only to advance the gospel, preaching the truth, only Christ, and ready to suffer whatever was necessary to spread the truth. I wonder if that's my purpose. Is that your purpose? To preach Christ, to speak Christ, to show Christ in your life, and do whatever is necessary. Wow, that's a big thing. If you need a mission statement, that's perfect. A personal, mission statement. To preach Christ, be a servant, because the Creator God who made light shine out of darkness has shown the light of Jesus in your hearts. I just wonder, though, what do people see when they look at me? Do I make them think about God? Verse 7 says, "But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us." And we had, at this breakfast that we had here, we had some clay pots that I had bought, and I painted them with chalk paint, And so they're so easy to break. And I had to go through a bunch of them just to find some that weren't broken, But that's what God chose to put his treasure in this. I'm going to read you a little blurb from Matthew Henry's commentary on the Bible, because I thought it was so good. But recognize he's kind of talking in kind of an old English style, so just imagine you're reading some, back in the 1800s or something. But it's so beautiful. He says, "The treasure of gospel light and grace is put into earthen vessels. The ministers of the gospel," that's all of us, "are weak and frail creatures and subject to like passions and infirmities as other men. They are mortal and soon broken in pieces. And God has so ordered it that the weaker the vessels are, the stronger his power may appear to be, that the treasure itself should be valued the more. And note, there is an excellency of power in the gospel of Christ to enlighten the mind, to convince the conscience, to convert the soul, and to rejoice the heart. But all this power is from God, the author, and not from men, who are but instruments, so that God in all things must be glorified." I thought that was beautiful. And God's perfect plan is to use us to spread this? That just seems, I would not pick that. I would have picked a talking mountain. You go to the mountain and the mountain goes, whoa, blah, blah, blah. That's what I would have picked or something. But God chose to put his great treasure inside of us. And so we think, I'm just weak or what. Great, good, all the better. There you are. Now you're going to show that treasure even more. I don't know about you. You're probably not like this. But I do sometimes think too much about what people think about me. When I'm coming to one of these, I'm thinking, oh, what am I going to wear? So I put on like 2 or 3 things like, oh, that looks terrible. And this isn't ironed. And that, oh, I forgot to, paint my nails and all these kind of things, But what's important is, what do people think about my God? What do they think about my God, after they've been with me? Have you been with someone, you've had a conversation or you've spent some time together, and you go home and you think, I wonder if they thought I was stupid. I wonder if they thought that thing I said, did they think I was insulting them about that? Or did they take that right? Do you ever do that? Am I the only one? Okay, all right. So we all do this. But how many times do I stop and wonder, did God get glory in that conversation? Was that person really drawn to the Lord because of what I said and did? I'll tell you, not enough. Not enough do I think that. I may want it, but I don't think that. It's not a conscious thing, and I want to do that more. I want to be more aware that everything I do and every conversation I have with someone can be just an opportunity to show God's love. And I know you guys do that because you do it to me and you bless me. It's just a good reminder for all of us, that it's more important about what they think about our God. Paul goes on to say in verse 8, "We are hard-pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed." I'm so thankful that Paul was so honest. He didn't have to say that they had felt uncertain or anxious or confused about what was happening or afraid that they were going to die. He didn't have to say that, but he told us the truth, that he did. He felt hard-pressed. He felt uncertain about things, but he wasn't destroyed by that. He always had hope. He always had hope. I read this little thing. I thought it was hilarious. I don't know exactly what it all means, but I still think it's funny. It says, "The grace of faith is a sovereign cordial," and I guess that's some kind of a drink, "and an effectual antidote," like a joke, "against fainting fits in troublous times." Fainting fits in troublous times. I want to see that. Could somebody show me a fainting fit? I could see myself having a fit, that's for sure. But the fainting fits, I thought was kind of funny. But have you ever been really afraid? Have you ever had something happen in your life that all of a sudden you get some kind of news and your mind just goes into a whirl and you're trying to make sense of all of it and your heart is racing, your palms are sweating, you feel sick to your stomach and you think, oh Lord, why? What is this that's happened? We all have. And so when we get to those places, it's not an easy place to be in, but Paul was there many times. And so I was thinking about this lesson, and as I was telling my husband what it was about, it's about suffering. And so I kind of have been suffering, and he's like, well, maybe once you get done teaching the lesson, your suffering will be over. I don't think so, because, that's just not the way it works. But I have to say that this last year has been pretty hard, and I could probably write down that I have been hard-pressed and perplexed and persecuted and struck down and even wondering if I was going to die, really, in the last 12 months. I just have to go through a few things. I'm not exactly, it's been a little bit of pressure. My husband has had multiple surgeries with complications that have lasted for weeks, even months, that I had to take care of. And, because he needed someone to take care of him, and so I had to see him go through that. My son-in-law almost died. I had to watch him struggle just to live day by day. I had a beautiful granddaughter who was born perfect, except her arm stopped right here. I watched my daughter struggle with having that first baby and her husband laying there almost dying. I learned that my precious grandson, who's only 3, has autism. And I watched as his parents have prayed and have come to grips with this very life-changing reality for him. I've prayed as my son went through terrible pain and illness in his body. I saw my husband lose his father this last year. And I have struggled with the worst pain in my body I have ever had. I had to call the ambulance one day because I was in so much pain I couldn't breathe anymore. And so, I say, okay, I had a little bit of suffering, a little bit of pain, and watched people in pain around me. But I have also watched you. And I have watched you lose loved ones. I have watched you go through pain and illnesses and surgeries, and suffer in your marriages, worry over your children. But even in all that, I have seen God. I have seen God at work in my life, and I have seen him at work in yours. And that is an encouragement to me. Seeing each other's faith as we go through those hard times kind of proves or tests our trust in God, doesn't it? And so when people go through those, you see the depth of God's, work in their life. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3 and 4 says, "Blessed be the God and Father of Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God." And so, he gives us comfort, and we share that with others, with each other. And I love that because, boy, if I just talk to you for a few minutes about stuff you're going through, it's like, oh, good. Okay, I'm not alone. God is real. He's still here. He's working in all of us. We all have to go through things. God doesn't say we're not going to have any trouble. And I know this isn't like one of those messages like, yeah, trouble, okay. I don't want it either. But we have to understand that it's not necessarily that something's gone wrong, but that we just live in this sinful world, and sometimes that's going to happen. And Jesus said, in this world you're going to have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I've overcome the world. And Paul wrote, they that live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. You read that and you go, la, 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 la. No. But suffering has a purpose. Everything God does, everything he allows in your life has a purpose. It's not that he wants bad things to happen to us, but as they do and as he allows certain things, he works a purpose through that. Romans 8:28, we think of that a lot when we go through hard times, is all things work together for good to those who are the called according to his purpose. And 2 Corinthians 4:11 says, "For we who live are always delivered to death for Jesus' sake, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh." Paul said to live as Christ, to die as gain. That's our purpose, is to let God do whatever he wants to with us, because he has a wonderful plan in showing his light to those around us. So our offering should always bring glory to God. And in verse 15, Paul said, "For all things are for your sakes," he's writing to the Corinthians, "that grace, having spread through the many, may cause thanksgiving to abound to the glory of God." Suffering develops character in us like nothing else can. Maybe you're thinking, "Oh, I just want to be shallow then." I don't need depth of character. Shallowness is fine. Most people are shallow. I'm the same as them. But God won't allow us to stay there. I've noticed that he just always draws us into the deeper things. And certainly Paul, we see that in his life. The things he wrote, I mean, amazing. And part of that was because of the suffering he went through. G. Campbell Morgan, who was a minister back in the late 1800s, wrote in his book about this young guy who came to speak at his church. And he gave this brilliant message. And so he went home and he was talking to his wife. "Wasn't that a great message that young man spoke and everything?" And she said, "Yeah, but he'll be better after he suffers." I thought, well, that was nice. But it is true that, when people go through those things, it changes them. And I think God allows us to come to things that are very difficult to bring us to the end of ourselves. He doesn't want us to depend on our own giftings, our own strengths. He wants us to realize that there's nothing in us that is lasting or worthwhile. It is only him in us that can do those things that are worthwhile. My mom says, get to the end of yourself as quickly as you can. The sooner you realize that what you have inside of you is worthless, then you're going to be worth something. We need to get to the end of ourselves as quickly as possible so that we can let Jesus just do what he wants to do through us. I don't want people thinking, boy, Kathy sure is strong. She's gone through a lot of stuff this year, and it's been pretty hard. I want them to know that I couldn't even stand here. I could not have joy and peace in my heart if it was not for God's grace and goodness every day to fill me once again. That's what I want them to know. And so we have to speak that. We have to tell people, God, it's only by God that I could do any of this. He's the one that fills me every day. Suffering causes our roots to go down deep. We cling to him. Sometimes we're desperate for him. And when we're desperate to hear from him, we always do. We always do. I like to think, and I have thought this many times, I can learn and grow without suffering. I can learn. I'll trust God. I got faith. I don't need no suffering to do it, But I've never been able to do it in the same way as going through a trial does it. Have you? We grow to a certain extent, but it's like that testing then goes, okay, is that real? You've been saying it. Is it real? But I will tell you a little advice. When you're going through the little things, disappointments, frustrations, little things, learn right there to stop asking, why me? Why does this happen to me? Why I always get the one? Stop asking that and just say, okay, God, what do you want to do in this situation? What are you trying to do in me? Or what do you want me to do here? Learn to serve his purpose. And if you do that, when you get to the bigger things, it's going to be so much easier because you're going to have learned, wait a minute, no freak out, stop. God is in control and he's able to do anything. I find that I draw so much from people who have gone through experiences like that. They have such a richness in their spirit. I love it. You remember when Greg Laurie lost his son in that terrible car accident? And I think we all, just cried with them, a pain that only a parent can know of losing a child, horrible pain. But I remember thinking after a while, after we'd prayed for them for a while, I thought, I can't wait to hear his first message after that. Because I knew that grief would have brought him close to the Lord, that he would have surrendered his heart and fell at God's feet. He would have heard from God, and I wanted to hear what God had spoken to him in that time. Another example, I was just thinking about this morning. I don't know why, because there's so many of you that I could think this of, but I was thinking of Gina. Sorry, Gina. Please, Gina, I love you so much. But when I first met you, you were so positive and so... Mary Sunshine. You were Mary Sunshine. You were so always exuding, God is so good, always giving glory to God. And it was nice, but I didn't know how much that meant to you until I saw you go through trials. When I saw you go through things with your husband's health, your daughters, with your health, yourself, with a baby coming, with, all the different things that have come up, then I knew I knew the depth of her love for the Lord. And I have to say that she's one of those people that, I have my tissue, that after I spend time with her, I'm constantly thinking about the Lord. I am not thinking about her. That's what I want to be. That's what we want to be. That is not going to be about us. It's going to be about him. Because nothing I have to share is going to be lasting except him. So, how do we suffer without being destroyed by it? You know, we all think of what Paul went through, so many things he went through, and that encourages us, okay? God saw Paul through all of that, and he still had a joy and a love for God and a love for his people. But Paul thought of Jesus. He thought of what Jesus went through, that Jesus came as a man in flesh. He was perfect, without sin, and yet he was willing to be despised and rejected and beaten and put on a cross by the very people he was coming to save. He took the horrible sins of the whole world on himself just so we could have that relationship with him. And so Paul thought of what Jesus did. And in comparison, his afflictions were not heavy. That's what he said. These light afflictions. I mean, I say, oh, mine, oh, woe is me, I had all these things happen. But he's saying in light afflictions. And these are some of the things he went through. Stripes laid on my back, frequently in prison, faced death many times. Of the Jews, 5 times I received 40 stripes save one. 3 times I was beaten with sticks. Once I was stoned. 3 times I suffered shipwreck. I spent a night and a day floating out in the ocean. It's like, oh, just little things like that. Like I went to the store. I was out in the ocean dying. I was in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in watchings often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness. And besides all of that, he says, those things that came upon me daily, I also had the care of all the churches. And if you've ever been in ministry, you know that that is not a light thing. Anytime you minister to people or your friends, there's a heavy weight on you for their souls, So he says, but the light affliction, which was but for a moment. And I think, how could he say that, It's hard. But he said that seeing the invisible, seeing the unseen, that God is there and who he is, getting a glimpse of him. He says, we do not lose heart, verses 16 through 18 of chapter 4. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. You know how you have a dream? I had this dream last night that I don't know what Tom was doing, but he was driving really, really fast down this hill, and the car was just getting out of control, and I'm saying, stop the car, stop the car, stop the car, and then all of a sudden I woke up, and my heart was racing, and I realized, it was a dream. Oh, thank you, Lord, it was a dream. Well, it kind of makes me think that way about our lives. We're so engrossed in the details of what's going on and with the things we see, and we get upset by those things, we're worried by them or whatever. But the truth is, the reality is the spiritual life. That is what is more powerful than our physical life. And that's what's hard because it's the unseen life. I wish we had like these special glasses. Now I see you, I see your bodies, I see your clothes. Now I see your spirits. Now I see God's angels that are in the room. I see Jesus flowing through you. I wish we could see that. But if we get a glimpse of Jesus through the Word, then it opens our eyes more to that, doesn't it? Then we can see that life is not just about just being a nurse, just being a mom, just being a wife. It's about being God's handmaiden, used by him for things that are eternal. I love that, don't you? I love you, sisters. You're so precious. You're so precious.